you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick Podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
all in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick Podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. The Eye Test with Pierre, McGuire, and Jimmy Murphy.
The Stanley Cup winning Colorado Avalanche. And after 22 years, Raymond
The sickest NHL podcast. Brought to you by TCS Customs and Logistics. Moving pieces, delivering peace of mind. It's gonna be sick.
And welcome to another edition of the Eye Test here in the Sick Podcast Network. He is Pierre McGuire. I am Jimmy Murphy. And before we'll talk plenty of playoff hockey later on, we'll get right to our featured guest right now. And we are happy to welcome on SKA Saint Petersburg head coach and vice chairman Roman Rotenberg, joining us from Russia right now here in the Eye Test. Roman, welcome aboard. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. Our pleasure for sure. I was actually talking to a mutual friend of ours back and forth in email, Scotty, who told me to say hello to you and praised you. He said to him, you are the hardest working man in hockey over there. And, I think you and Pierre would get along great because that's Pierre's title here in North America. So we're glad to have you. Welcome aboard.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Hey, Roman, I got to ask you right away, how was your weekend? You were celebrating all those championships in St. Petersburg. How'd that go?
Yeah, we had a great event with the fans coming, everyone together. It's 10th year anniversary of our first Gagarin Cup. So we worked hard before that, few years before getting that cup, but it was first cup in the history of our club, and we are since 1946. So very long time we didn't win anything. So it was our first cup in 2015, because in Soviet era there was a CSKA, other big clubs. SKA, we became a big club only last 10 years. So we had a great celebration with our fans, with all our players, and we played like a charity game there, and we went everyone on ice, played good hockey game. It was very nice, good for the fans.
It is.
Roman, just to give a little background to our viewers and listeners who aren't familiar with you, how long have you been coaching, and how did you get into the KHL scene?
So my background comes from a family where my father was a coach, but he was like a judo coach. So it was like a professional judo coach. He was also part of USSR team for judo, and he was like very good in judo. So I was going with him to practice since I was 3 years old in Russia. I was still in Russia back in the time. Mm-hmm. When I was 10, my family, we moved to Finland, to Helsinki. And then there in Finland, I started to play hockey. I wanted to play hockey before, but my parents couldn't afford to take me with a driver, to take me. There was only one rink at this time.
Wow.
It was back in Leningrad. It was not even St. Petersburg back then. Wow. It was 1991, 1989. So during this time, I wanted to play hockey when I was small because I always watched hockey on TV. Mm-hmm. And it was like, in that time, it was only hockey on TV. Like it was so big in Soviet Union back at the time, mm-hmm. So big back then. So I wanted to play hockey, but my parents, we lived very far away, so they couldn't take me to the rink. Mm-hmm. So I did judo when I was small. I did judo since I was 2 years old. Like I was physically very well prepared. So when I went to play hockey in Finland, I was already prepared physically. Mm-hmm. So I went to the club there in Helsinki, like very small club. I started to play, and I went to skate at the public rinks all the time, like 6 hours a day. I was skating.
Wow!
Like every day, to improve my skating, because without skating you can't really play hockey. Yeah. And because I started late comparing to the other players in Finland, they're good players there. So I had to catch up. So I had to catch up the skating skills. So I went to the public rinks, apart from playing in the club. Right. And by the age of 16, I was already, I could skate and I could play in a good club. And I joined this kind of sport program there. They had a sport college there. So they took me to this sport program. Mm-hmm. They had only national team players there. Different sports, I think you have the same in Canada, where you can study and then you can play. Let's say we had 2 hours in the morning skate from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. and then we had school, and then again with the club, and we play 3 games a week, 2 games a week. We went with a bus around Finland, playing with different teams. So I was playing there for 10 years, and then when I was 20 years old, I had to choose between like playing professional hockey or going to study to university. And I wanted to play hockey, but then some injuries. My friend got injured, and my mother, she was not really supporting me with my professional hockey interest. So I went to study to London. Actually, I went to study to UK. So I studied there, and I also played hockey there. Not professional anymore. Played hockey there. After England, I came back. I came back to Russia and joined Gazprom, export company, to work with like external relationships. And at the time, it was 2008. 2008, I started to like work in a project called KHL. At the time, Alexander Medvedev was the head of the project named KHL. It was just a project back then.
I remember
It was
that,
not a league then. It was a super league before. And I joined him, and then we started from there, and then step by step, I was working as a GM. Then since 2008, I've been involved with this hockey scene every day, in different roles though. I started as a commercial director, marketing director first, because I kind of knew how to develop hockey as a product. And then after that, step by step, getting involved with the team. Actually, 2015, it was my first year as a GM. I was holding this title together with the head coach at the time, Bykov, Vyacheslav Bykov. He was our head coach. So it was my first year as a GM, and then we won the cup. So, when you work as a GM, you have to get involved in it all the time with different practices, tactics, and we had a series in playoffs, final of the conference against SKA, losing 0-3 in this series, So we had to change many things in order to win this first cup and first series, step by step. It's the only time in Russian ice hockey history that one team came from 0-3. I know in NHL few times it happened.
Yeah.
I think most recently, Los Angeles Kings did that when they won the cup. But so this is how we started, and then step by step, getting involved more and more. And then I saw that with the coaching, it's in some ways there's no change. There's no progress. So after Olympic Games 2018, when we won, I was working as a GM, and then I kind of saw that we have to change something, like in the club, in the not only the national team, all our youth system, all our different teams for under 16, under 18, under 20 years old. So we had to change this approach, and it was kind of hard. Of course, we had some coaches coming from Canada. We have some good coaches in Russia, but the way we see hockey and the way hockey is developing, and I can say honestly that in NHL now I really admire how hockey is developing there, because it's the way we should all work, in a sense of that it has to be more open, more goals, more technical players there, more for the people, more for the fans, not only like this defense, when you park the bus, big bus, and you can't get through, and it's so boring for everyone. And actually, it was funny when I spoke to the GM of Canadiens Hurricanes, Eric. He told me, if you lose by parking the bus, you will not have any fans anymore. The fans will leave. But if you play good hockey, and you still sometimes you lose, these fans still love you. This is, and also the players develop, and it's a step forward always. And I think this is why I became the head coach. I wanted to change, and I see that we can change. We can develop players, and we can win with this play model that we have. But we have to work more. And in this play model, you also need special players. The players need to have good skating, good hockey sense, good skills. They need to play together. Because in the other model, standing still hockey, they can just stand there in the neutral zone, park there, the bus, and then wait for the power play, for example. But it's not developing anyone, and it's not good for the future.
Well, SKA.
This is briefly how I became the head coach.
Right?
Well, no, but SKA has developed a lot of great players over time. Artemi Panarin, Gavrikov's playing in LA. Kuzmenko's still a real good player. Shesterkin's a goalie. Askarov's a goalie. But I want to ask you about one player in particular, Demidov. You played a big role in his development. How good a player is he, Coach?
I think he's one of the best players I had in my life. Of course, when I was small, when I was young, when I was 10 years old, 11 years old, I was following with Pavel Bure, Alexander Mogilny, Sergei Fedorov, all these big players, because they had everything like explosive power, skating, shooting, scoring. So I think Demidov is this kind of a player, special player. And when I saw him when he was like 5 years ago, we started to speak more to each other, and then I saw that he has a lot of potential, Ivan. But of course, he needs to work on his skills. In our system, in SKA system, and also different Russian national teams that he was part of. Most recently, he won the Channel 1 Cup, 3-on-3, and the main tournament. So he had a lot of skill, a lot of talent. But sometimes he's like, player is very skilled, very talented, but he's like soft skill. Like he's not hard enough to become a NHL player or KHL player. So we worked on his physics a lot, on his character, on his battles, one-on-one battles in the corners. We had special drills for that, and all the time he was working hard. And I think he did a great progress last summer. So he got injured in the MHL finals when our youth team won the Harlamov Cup. He was not playing in the finals. Our team won without him because he had injury in the semifinal game. And I had a chance to speak to him a few times during those games. We spoke a lot, and he asked me like, what should I do to become a KHL player? What should I do to make in the first power play unit to play big minutes? So I told him, you need to work on your physics. So we gave him the program in the summer, working mainly on his speed, explosive power. And he did all that program. So he became much stronger now. So that's why I'm not surprised in his first NHL game. It's not so many. I'm not sure if I can remember any player in the history of hockey that comes from our league, from Russia, and goes to NHL and plays big minutes. First game, just coming from KHL and still scoring and winning battles, and is like an impact player. Yep. This is something special, really special for everyone. But I'm not surprised because I saw his skill, and also in KHL, it's sometimes for this kind of forwards it's harder to play because it's a different refereeing there. Everything is allowed, in KHL. Like everything is allowed. Like. And that's why Ivan, he still scored in KHL. He still scored in playoffs KHL with this refereeing. And with the NHL refereeing, because it's more clean and it's better for the technical players and better for offense. So I was 100% sure that I even bet with some people that Ivan will score his first goal in his first game. No one believed me,
I hope you cashed in. He did.
I made some bets.
Jimmy, I got to back the coach up on this. So the one thing that the KHL is a great league. It's a great league. But one of the things that really has to happen, the refereeing needs to get fixed. The refereeing is not good enough for the caliber of player that they have in the KHL. The refereeing is not good enough.
That's so true. Just especially for development of the players. They need to be able to play. I think this change was made in NHL a long time ago. I remember
2005.
Yes, New Jersey Devils winning the Stanley Cup. Yes, this year, and fans left. And then no income, no business.
Yep.
Yeah.
No honey. No money, no honey. So it is in this way. It had to change, but it was 2005 when you changed NHL, and since then, step by step, it's so entertaining now, scoring so many goals. I think we also in KHL eventually will come to the point where everything will be more for the offense. Now everything is for the defense.
Yep.
How about your thoughts on Nikishin and how his game might translate into the NHL?
It's for for defender. It's of course because it's only 6 defenders in the lineup. It's 12 forwards in lineup, so it will be harder for Alex to join Carolina Hurricanes lineup straight away. So he didn't. He was scratched off first game, and I think it's just so difficult for the head coach to put him in because he just arrived and I think he had a delay with his visa, so. It's not going to be easy for him, but he's ready. He's ready. He's physically ready. When he gets his chance, I'm sure he will make it. It's just for D, it's twice as hard for forward. It's more difficult.
Coach, I've said many times on this show, you can't call any tournament best on best unless the Russians are involved. Do you have any insight into potential of the Russians joining the international hockey community again?
I think it's very bad for international hockey and for hockey development that Russia is not involved. It's very bad for everyone because Russia Canada is the classic for the fans, of course, for the income also, for investment and for ticket income and everything, for the hockey development, for the boys, for the young kids, it's so important to play again. For our kids, it's important to play against Canada. I'm sure that for Canadian, American kids, it's also very important to play against Russia. So I'm sure it will change very soon. We see this progress politically. Everything is changing. I see that we are almost there. I think soon we'll join again and play best on best, and Russia will be part of the big ice hockey family. But at the time, while we didn't play at the international tournaments, we did a lot of work inside, like with the young kids. We started to develop this ice hockey program. We have young kids. Actually, I just came from tournaments called TCS Cup, under 11 years old. My son also plays there. He's 9, and I see that the teams, how they play, the Russian hockey is developing. And that's even those tournaments that for young kids, we should bring Canadian teams, so we go to Canada to play because it's so important for those kids to see other countries, especially Canadian players, see different hockey, different skills. It's so important for them. Even inside Russia, we try to play those tournaments where we bring, because Russia is a big country, so we try to bring teams from different cities from Russia, Magnitogorsk, Kazan. They have some great hockey bases there. Yaroslav, it's hockey is developing in Russia. Even though we're not part of the international tournaments right now, but we're working inside now. So I'm sure when we come back and while changing this, the way we play, our team will surprise Canada. We come and win with Demidov and Nikishin and all those players that leaving to NHL now. We take them and we win against Canada. This is how we work now. It's a challenge now. It's a challenge.
Hey, Jimmy, the coach just brought up Magnitogorsk, so I got to ask him, when SKA goes on the road and you play in Magnitogorsk, do you stay at the Mirage Hotel?
Yes, at the Mirage Hotel.
Okay,
yeah,
just checking.
That didn't change. Yeah. This is the same.
Jimmy,
even though
it's a beautiful hotel, it is a magnificent.
It's a beautiful hotel. But also, I have to say, Magnitogorsk changed as a city a lot. You wouldn't recognize the city. It's so nice now with the big, huge park inside, with nice restaurants. It's a very Russia is developed like Yekaterinburg. It's so nice city right now.
Yekaterinburg's
right.
Because one part of my job is we are traveling all the time around all the cities in Russia. So I see how our country is developing. It's so beautiful. Like the cities are becoming so nice now. And you can also ask players that play in Russia. It's developing every day. So it's changed a lot. You should come. We're inviting you to come next game in St. Petersburg.
I test on the road, Pierre. There we go.
Coach and I have talked a fair bit. He knows what I think. But you know what? I will say this. If we're going to call events best on best, the Russians have to be in it. They have, because it's not best on best if the Russians aren't in. I'm just telling you right now, it's not.
Yep.
100%. Yeah.
There was some talk
together.
Roman, there was some talk right after the Four Nations face-off about an exhibition series of games between maybe the KHL and the NHL. Have you heard anything more about that? Do you think that will gain some progress and potentially happen?
Yeah, I think that's all possible. Of course, we need to approach NHL. We need to approach Gary Bettman, and he will give the permission to play. But I think everyone is interested. So like NHL clubs, KHL clubs, we want to all to play. It can be as a national team, Russian national team playing USA team or Canadian team in Russia, or we can play in Abu Dhabi, for example. We can play anywhere. Like
Right.
for example, now we are discussing youth tournaments in Istanbul, in Turkey, so that like some Canadian teams can fly there from Canada to Istanbul, and we fly from Moscow to Istanbul, St. Petersburg to Istanbul. We can play there, so we can find any location. Of course, in Russia it can be St. Petersburg, which is like one of the best arenas in the world right now.
It is.
It's amazing. It's amazing. You should come and visit. You know, it's a very new technology, very nice, and it's something. It's very similar to the Detroit Arena, but it's newer and big, also a little bit bigger and new technology. So if you've been to Detroit Arena, it's very
Many,
similar.
many times. Yeah. Many
Yeah.
times. Little Caesars. Hey, Coach, I got to ask you about Evgeny Kuznetsov. The relationship you had with Demidov, and the other part is, does he have enough game left to play in the NHL?
You know, for Ivan and the players that now play in NHL, it was good experience that they played with the players that had already experienced winning the Stanley Cup, being the best, you know, in NHL. So he shared that experience. Evgeny Kuznetsov, he shared that experience. What comes to his game, I think he has still possibility to play, but he needs to get his physics, you know, there, and it will take it's actually basically it's his decision. If he wants to go back to NHL, play his best hockey in cash, it's up to him. We know that he can be. If he was the best point scorer in 2018 playoffs and winning the cup, you know, it was not so long time ago. So I'm sure he can still do it, but it's really up to him. You know how it is: character, attitude, training, lifestyle. You know, healthy lifestyle. To be able to have this discipline off the ice, first of all, and after that on the ice, you know.
Hey, Coach, the other one I wanted to ask you, I know he's a Moscow guy, so I know he's not St. Petersburg. What did it mean to Russian people and hockey people in particular with Alexander Ovechkin breaking the scoring record of Wayne Gretzky?
Yeah, Alex is, I think, one of the best in the history, and he is the best goal scorer in the history right now. This is something unbelievable for Russian hockey. I think he did an amazing job. Because every time in the morning when you put the morning news, before in Russia, like football is number one sports. So everyone you put the TV on, like you have football there. And now when Alex was chasing Gretzky's record, and he did that record, every morning you put TV on, there was hockey there. So I think it's great for hockey development, you know, for Russian hockey, for the kids, for everyone. So this is something historically is unbelievable. So it means a lot to us, and I know Alex really well. I worked with him in the national team. He always comes to any invitation that we had for him for world championships, any tournament. He always came, and he's like a patriot of his country. You know, he loves Russia. So this is something amazing that he did to development of Russian hockey. You know, it's as I said, you know, before on TV you just watch football all the time. Now you have hockey, so it's good for hockey people. It's great because then you have more kids going to hockey schools. Everyone talking about hockey, and it's something big for us. Yes, once again we want to congratulate Alex on that record.
Good stuff. My final question for you, Coach. I wonder, you know, over the last, let's say 5 to 7, maybe 10 years, the last decade, we'll say, Russian goalies have taken over the NHL. It used to be Canada. What happened? Like, was there an emphasis? Was there a focus in Russia to produce better goalies?
I think it's a Russian character, honestly speaking. When I see a Russian character, like it's in the blood, you know, because the goal is, you know, when you in Russia, when you become a goalie, it's kind of it's tough. It's still tough to be a goalie. It's a different, for me, it's a different sport, you know. Mentally tough also, because it's you do one mistake, you know, you can be like the guy that changed the game, you know. And everyone comes to you and say, why you did this? Even though the D does mistake, it's still a goalie there, right? Or forward does mistake, still a D and the goalie there. So for goalie, it's tough. But I think it's Russian character. It's like the nature, like they're so tough, you know. The like Russian character is like that. They never give up. So that's why I think all those players like Bobrovsky, for example, he's also very, very disciplined. He's amazing character, but he's also very disciplined, and also, of course, talent. I think this is why it happened, because of the talent, the willpower, and the character there. And then, of course, Russia, like in Russia, it's hockey is still, in the regions, it's like very, very popular sport still,
Of course.
and
Yeah.
becoming more popular now. So I think that's how it became. But also, I think at some point Tretiak made this change. He pushed in the Super League. He pushed them to play Russian goalies. So before they were inviting all the Canadian, Swedish, or Finnish goalies.
Imports,
Before,
yeah.
imports, yeah, and then he changed that. So he said, like, you have to play the Russian goalie. So that's how these Russian goalies got a chance to play at the time as Super League. So this also made a change. But overall, is the character, I think, that is this. Maybe not so many players, like even like now the young boys. You don't see so many players that want to be a goalie. It's a tough job to be a goalie. Is it?
Yeah, for sure.
Mentally and physically.
Coach, we can't thank you enough. We know how late it is over there. You've been fantastic to join us. We really appreciate it. I look forward to talking to you a lot more. Thank you so much for joining
Anytime.
us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Coach.
Soon let's meet in Canada and Russia wins.
All right.
It's a
We'll
challenge.
take you up on that. All right.
See you, Coach.
Have a good night. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
All right. Roman Rotenberg joining us here on the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network. What an interview that was, Pierre, huh? What a wealth of knowledge.
He's got huge passion for hockey.
Yep.
There was a lot of it I just didn't want to get to just because it was late and we didn't want to keep going because we do have playoffs in North America right now. But I can tell you, like, his passion to develop people, I'm talking about on the ice, is unbelievable. Like, Jimmy, I'm telling, we had the longest talk last week, and it was all about developing players, the best way to develop players. And it wasn't about trapping or systems. It was about how do you make players better? It was fascinating. We were exchanging ideas back and forth. He knows some of the players that I used to work with, and I know a lot of the players he used to work with. So we were just exchanging ideas. It was really fascinating.
What I found interesting there, and of course this happens a lot, is, I think over the last year when, a lot of the media was covering the whole Demidov situation, would he come, would he not come, and what was going on with him, and just following it so much, he was kind of portrayed as the bad guy, Pierre, and maybe like, you know what I mean? Like he wasn't helping.
He sat the kid down. He didn't play him. So people don't understand. Coaches create standards.
Exactly. So that's what I'm getting at. So when you listen to him, I don't know how you could see that interview and come away thinking that he doesn't care about the progress of Demidov, the player and the person, as was portrayed for so long, for so many months. I mean, it was a complete opposite of what we've heard there. So it was impressive to hear him talk about how much he saw in this player, how much he believed in him. And as you say, that doesn't mean he's just going to hand him the reins and hand him as much playing time as he wants. You got to earn it, and you got to buy in. And I think that's how it always should be.
Well, I really like what you just said, and I'll tell you one more thing, Jimmy, that's really important. Everybody says, "Well, they're just developing players there." They got pressure to win, man. Like it's a big business.
Oh yeah,
SKA is a big business. You go to Moscow and you go to the rinks in Moscow. It's a big business.
Yep.
There's some teams that do better than others. We just talked about Magnitogorsk, and I've been there, and it's, the Mirage, a beautiful hotel. You'd be shocked. You'd say, this is in Magnitogorsk, or if you go to Omsk, which is an 8-hour plane ride from Moscow, or you go to Ufa, which is about a 3.5 to 4 hour plane ride from Moscow, you'd be shocked at how big the rinks are, and you'd be shocked about how many people are in the building. So there's huge pressure to win in these places. Yeah. And I don't think people realize that. They just think, oh, it's, a European pro league and they just drop the puck and play. There's a lot of people to answer to if you don't win. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah, very interesting stuff. The final thing I'll say too, he was talking about, when his history of being an athlete and turned into a hockey player. He's talking about the judo there, and I'm immediately thinking of Chara with the Greco wrestling, Pierre.
Well, that's when his dad let him go to Prince George. He said, after I picked my dad up and dropped him, my dad said, "Okay, you're ready to go now."
And I'm also
thinking his dad won a medal in the Olympics. as a Greco-Roman wrestler back there with Czechoslovakia. But
and I'm also thinking I would not want to line up against a judo professional on the ice there. I'm all set with that.
I'm not sure about that part of it, but yeah, no, listen, I do know one thing from all the conversations the coach and I have had and people that are close to his program, they want players to evolve there. Yep. He was just at this huge youth tournament. He was just talking about it. I know because he was on his way to go there when I was talking to him. He said, we want to get the very best kids. We want to be the most progressive franchise so that we can get these kids in here, get them to school and develop them, not just athletically, but academically too. I know that I couldn't go to Russia and do an interview in Russian, but he sat here. It's almost a morning for him. It's almost Tuesday morning. Yep. And he was speaking in English, and I thought his thing was fantastic.
Yeah, it was great. It was very interesting, and it was really a pleasure to have Roman Rotenberg here in the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network. All right, as you said, Pierre, it's kind of a big tournament going on over here in North America right now, and that would be the 2025 Stanley Cup playoffs. And Pierre, we'll get into the gambling in a bit when we talk about Betway, but in terms of the teams that won, there were no upsets really in the games we saw over the weekend. But I look at as we go forward here, look at the slate of games. We got 4 games tonight, and I think it's going to be a great night of hockey. And I'm looking at the games tonight, Pierre, and the one that keeps standing out to me, and I'm not saying this to pander to our Canadians audience here, but just truthfully, when I look at the matchups, the one that stands out to me the most that could potentially end up the underdog winning would be the Montreal Canadiens. And I just think we've seen it so many times, the way momentum can carry over from a team, that's riding in just to make the playoffs and fighting tooth and nail. We saw with the Florida Panthers when they beat the Bruins, who had the best record ever in the regular season 2 seasons ago. I just get that vibe from the Montreal Canadiens Washington Capitals series. What's your feel going into this series, Pierre?
I'm worried about the physicality of Washington. That's what if I cared. I'm so happy Montreal made the playoffs, Jimmy. I really am sincerely, passionately happy that they made the playoffs. My concern now that they have made the playoffs, Washington was kind of playing possum down the stretch. They wanted Ovechkin to get the record. They've had a week to rest.
Yeah.
They've had a week to rest.
Right. They're
not coming out playing softball.
No, I don't think
they're going to come out hard. And what I think is early, they know they have a significant advantage when it comes to size. And I think that could be an issue in the series.
You're the coach. How do you counter that size? What's the best way?
You got to spend time. You got to make sure you spend time. Face-offs are important because you got to control the puck. Getting pucks deep and making sure you possess the puck so you force them to defend rather than attack. And you can't take penalties if you allow them to get on the power play. Whether it's Ovechkin, whether it's John Carlson, whether it's Jacob Chikrin, whether it's Wilson down low, it doesn't matter. If you take penalties, they're gonna beat you up pretty good, even more. So, I'll say this to you, and he's a friend of ours, Jimmy. Josh Anderson's probably the closest thing Montreal has to Kevin Stevens when I was coaching. Okay.
Yep.
Josh Anderson's not Kevin Stevens.
No.
Okay, I'm just telling you.
Yeah.
We don't win a lot of the games we won against Washington if we didn't have Kevin or Mario. But those two together were, dynamite. Montreal didn't have that. Like Caulfield and Suzuki aren't Stevens and Lemieux. Slavkovsky and Suzuki aren't Stevens and Lemieux. Or Tocchet and Lemieux. We had a line with Stevens, Lemieux, and Tocchet. How'd you like to have to defend against those guys?
I know.
And we played them back-to-back years in the playoffs.
Yeah.
They were a big team then too, but we beat them up. They thought they'd beat us up. We actually beat them up.
You counterpunched.
Yeah. So I don't know if Montreal has that. That's my only fear. That's my concern.
One of the things you and I were kind of keeping track of down the stretch run for the Canadiens, Pierre, as they tried to clinch that playoff spot, was Marty St. Louis and how he adjusted game to game, shift to shift. I thought there were times, obviously, when he wasn't, but the next game, he did seem to come back stronger in terms of making the necessary adjustments. Did you see the same thing in the last 2 weeks? And do you think that can help them going forward?
Nothing's more obvious, and it's a great point by you, Jimmy, is when They start in Ottawa and they start the top
That's
line.
what I was thinking of.
You know, they
Yep.
start Caulfield, Suzuki, and Slavkovsky, and the other team start Shane Pinto and Ridley Gregg. And they're like, really? Okay. And they score 28 seconds in. The next night in Toronto, a tough back-to-back, and the Kings had to get something out of that, and they got a point. They don't start those guys. They start Anderson. They start Dvorak. They start Gallagher. So they set the tone early. I think for Montreal to have any success, if they fall behind and have to chase the game, I'm not sure that's going to be a good recipe for success. It's like, let me use Ottawa as an example, Jimmy. Last night, and I said this to Jimmy. Jimmy knows before we came on today. I said cross-checking wasn't in the Ottawa Senators pre-scout.
No.
But their players kept cross-checking all the time, and they kept taking cross-checking.
Right in front of the ref, too.
Crazy stuff, just crazy. Yeah. So, like, Marty's got to stretch. You talk about Marty. Marty's got to stretch fellas 5-on-5. Let's make them take penalties. Let's go on the power play. How do you do that? You get pucks deep. You win faceoffs. You control the puck. You play to your strengths, not your weakness.
Yep.
If you're defending the whole night and you're Montreal, it's not going to be good.
I'm so glad you said that too, Pierre, because on that note, one of the things that I thought led to Ottawa's demise in Game 1 against Toronto was they weren't themselves. It was almost like they went in and they knew that maybe Toronto can play over. I mean, obviously they've got Brady Tkachuk, but they knew overall maybe Toronto can play a more playoff style game, a more physical game. Yeah. And it seemed like they got too caught up in countering that instead of just sticking to themselves and being themselves. And that's what Montreal's going to do. Montreal, like you just said, everything you just said, Montreal is not the Washington Capitals. They are not going to beat them at that game. They have to beat them at their own game, or they have no chance. So we'll see what happens.
I would agree. I mean, this is going to be interesting. Like you go into Washington right now. You know, you're the early game. You're the first game up tonight. You gotta stand and deliver. I think if they do well in Game 1, they got a chance to make this a hard-fought, long series where they got a chance to win. If they get driven, I know you're never in trouble in a series till you lose on home ice. I get it. But this one's different. This one's really different.
Yep.
Because of the size of the Capitals is it's different. I'll tell you right now, if Dowd and Duhaime get running around going crazy, with Radish, that line goes out and starts getting crazy physically. It's going to be a problem for Montreal. They don't have an answer to that.
Yep. I'm with you on that. Pierre, the other series that is starting off tonight is the LA Kings and the Edmonton Oilers. We've been in agreement for a while. We think this could finally be the year that LA breaks through against the Oilers. That doesn't mean they're necessarily going to win. They're getting healthy. They're there. But I just look at that series right now. I still feel the same way. I just feel like right now LA is coming in, playing at a higher level of hockey. And also, I just don't know how the Oilers get over the Ekholm loss, like not having him in there. I think not enough people are talking about this across the league. That is a huge loss there. I don't care that you have arguably the two best players in the NHL on your team in Draisaitl and McDavid. That Ekholm loss could really haunt them.
Don't forget, Cody Cece's playing in Dallas and Philip Broberg's playing in St. Louis.
Exactly.
Like 3 of their top 6 are not there anymore.
Exactly. And that was always their deficiency, was defense and goaltending.
We talk about Florida. Think about it. Florida lost Montour to Seattle, free agent. They lose Oliver Ekman-Larsson, who scored the first goal for Toronto in the playoffs last night. And they obviously, because of the suspension for the PED, they don't have Ekblad.
Yep.
So everybody says, well, why is Florida struggling down the stretch? How come they're not figure it out?
Yeah.
Hello. I read all these articles, Jimmy. I don't read one where they say, well, they don't have Brandon Montour. How many points is that out of the lineup? Oh, and they don't have Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Oh, they don't have Ekblad. And Matthew Tkachuk's not playing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Yep. Good goal by him last night, huh?
That was a great shot.
Good shot.
All
right. And then the 2 series that already started will resume. We'll see 2 Game 2s tonight, Pierre. And, of course, that's the St. Louis Blues and the Winnipeg Jets, and then the Colorado Avalanche and Dallas Stars. With the Blues, I still think they win this series. Obviously, tonight's a huge one. They got to come away with the split here. But in your opinion, what went wrong for them in the third period?
They stopped playing defense at the end of the second period. And I'm a huge Colton Parayko fan, but he didn't play very well.
No.
And I don't know if there's lingering problems from his injury, but he did not have a great afternoon in Winnipeg for game 1. I expect he'll be better tonight. I expect Justin Falk will be better tonight on the back end. But the one thing I give a lot of credit to Winnipeg, man, they get after you on the forecheck. Like they're physical, they finish checks. And for them to have done what they did, come from behind and win that game without Gabe Vilardi, that says a lot to me about Scheifele, and Scheifele's leadership has improved exponentially. It says a lot about Josh Morrissey, and it says a ton about Adam Lowry. Yeah. Those guys, it says a lot about their leadership, because nobody really wanted to write this or talk about it. But the big knock on Winnipeg with all those good teams they had is they were devoid of internal leadership. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of these guys have learned their lessons. Yep. And they're leading by example in a much better and firm way. And that's positive for them.
I'm telling you this, Pierre. Wait 1 sec. We've got some breaking news here, Pierre. Let me just make sure this is correct. And you might already know it because you're on top of everything. But and here we go. Elliot Friedman saying that the Seattle Kraken are about to make a coaching change and Dan Bylsma will be let go. Arthur Staple from The Athletic reporting that
Ronnie Francis
might be gone as well.
He'll be the president and Jason Botcher will be the GM. I believe that's what's going to be reported.
Okay. All right. Interesting. The changes are coming fast and furious, especially behind the bench. I don't get why it still seems restricted to behind the bench, Pierre. We have this conversation a lot. I think
not good. I'm going to say I like Danny. Danny won a Stanley Cup. He got hired by my late great friend Ray Shero. I'll never forget the phone call I got on a Sunday morning at 2:30 in the morning saying that Michel Therrien was going to get released and they were bringing Danny Bylsma, the coach. And I asked Ray why he did it, because he wanted to know what I thought. And I said, I got to ask you why you're doing it. And I'm not going to get into the particulars of why, but he told me why. And I said, that works. Mm-hmm. That works. Yep. And eventually Ray got proven right. In 2009, they won the Stanley Cup. So look, I don't want to get too into it, but I think their coaching search was flawed last year. I do.
Yeah. I think too, Pierre, it seemed from the first year when they surprised everyone, they made it to the playoffs. But after that year, they didn't seem to have a direction, so to speak. It just seemed like there were a lot of different signals coming out of that team in terms of what direction, what type of team they wanted to be, what were they trying to do. And it's just, in my opinion, it hasn't come together much, whether it's been behind the bench, on the ice, or even up top. That's why I think we're seeing changes right now. So there you go, more changes in the NHL. Pierre, the one change that we both are big fans of Greg Cronin there. And I'm not just saying this because of my connection to him, though. I don't understand that one. I really don't, Pierre. I look at that team since the Four Nations face-off. They've been about 500, but they're in every game. They had a ton of one-goal losses. They had a ton of games they forced overtime late and got the point. A lot of their younger players that were kind of sitting still or their progress wasn't going forward, they started to progress again. I mean, you look at Carter Gauthier down the stretch. He's playing the best hockey he's played since he's been in the NHL. So for a team that considered themselves, I don't know if they considered it fully deep in the rebuild still, but a developing team, I think everyone can agree on that. They were developing. There was no mandate publicly for them to make the playoffs. And then the GM comes out when he announces the firing and says, well, we need to get that next step. And I just don't think that Greg was the right guy to get us to the playoffs. I don't get any of this, Pierre. I'm sorry. I disagree with that move.
Okay, there's just one dangerous game that Patty Verbeek played in this whole thing. I think the players in their end-of-the-year meetings had some things to say. And so when you go down that road as a manager, usually you don't get another opportunity to do it. So you better make sure that the intel you got was 100%. Yeah. Because if you get it wrong, you got the potential to create a country club atmosphere. And I'm not going to use managers' names or coaches' names. All you need to do is look around the league at some of the teams where to use their players' advice to terminate coaches, and look what happens and how long it takes to fix. That's all I'm going to say.
Yep, I know one very well. All right. we look ahead, Pierre, just one more game I want to talk about there.
I would say one more thing about Coach Cronin.
Yes.
He's an outstanding coach. He's an outstanding coach. I watched more Anaheim games than I bet you anybody that's watching this show right now.
You did.
And I was really favorably impressed by how that team progressed. Especially you just talked about Cutter Gauthier was one of those players.
Mm-hmm.
Trevor Zegras, who played poopy at the start of the year, and I know they got hurt and everything else. Trevor Zegras got better. He got better. I'm just telling you. Mason McTavish had an amazing second half of the year. You know, you can go look at all the guys. Minchukov, when he was healthy. Look at all the guys. And look, I know Crow is probably really firm and more of a taskmaster. I get that. I get it. I totally get it. There's a spot for that in the league. Coaching's not a popularity contest. I understand the kids have changed. I get it.
Yep.
I get it. But you think Berube's all sugar and spice and everything's nice?
No. And look how that's worked there. Give it time. I'm not with that move there. All right, quickly back to the games tonight. The Avalanche at the Stars, Pierre. I think we're in agreement.
Last call for Dallas. I know it's only
they're
game
in big trouble.
They lost game 1 at home. And look, I will say this, Mackenzie Blackwood had to make some big saves for Colorado. Colorado only gets better from here. They only get better from here. Dallas, I feel terrible for them with the injuries they're dealing with. No Robertson, no Heiskanen, just getting Tyler Seguin back. You could see the speed quotient between those two teams wasn't even close. In game 1, wasn't even close. If that's the way the series is going to play out, this one's got a chance to be over fast.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think they're just too deep up the middle for Dallas. That's the thing. And I don't know how Dallas Cardinals at right now, so we shall see. All right, let's get to our sponsors and then my picks of the night, and of course your Q&A. Let's talk about TCS Customs and Logistics. Unlock the full potential of your shipping operation with TCS Customs and Logistics from around the corner to around the world. Flatbeds to air freight, customs clearance to drawback consulting. TCS is a one-stop shop for all things transport, moving pieces, and delivering a peace of mind. For no obligation customs or freight quote, contact sickpodcast at shiptcs.com. Again, that is sickpodcast at shiptcs.com. And of course, our good friends over at Betway, where you can still go all the way with Betway. And if you sign up right now, and this is only available for new members, so go to that QR code right in front of you. Or if you're not watching, go to the details section of the website, sign up for a new membership, and you will get a great welcome offer where they will match up to $200 on your first bet, even if your first bet loses. That's right. You get paid to lose over at Betway, and then keep betting and get some revenge. Look, right now, that offer, as I said, is only available to new customers. It is not available in Ontario. Terms and restrictions apply. You must be 18 plus, and you always must bet responsibly. Let's get to my sick pick of the night.
It's time for Sick Picks, brought to you by Betway.
All right, I'm going to go right to the game that a lot of our listeners or our viewers here are already talking about there in the Q&A, and that's the Montreal Canadiens and the Washington Capitals in game 1. I've got 2 bets on this one. I like the Montreal Canadiens to take game 1. Give me the Canadiens on the money line. They are at plus 164 right now, but I've been watching it today. That is going down, which means a lot of other people are looking at them as maybe pulling off an upset here in game 1. So get on that now if you like the Habs. Also, in that game, I like the Canadiens to score in the first period, a goal in the first period. So you write it over 0.5 goals. It means all they have to do is score 1 goal and you win the bet. That is at minus 105 right now, which is great value for a team to score a goal in the first period. And then I'm going to go to the aforementioned Colorado Avalanche, who we spoke about, up 1-0 in their series against Dallas. I like them to make that a 2-0 lead, headed back to Denver. Give me the Colorado Avalanche winning in regulation. So you want the regulation line. You'll get better value there. They're at plus 110. Avs in regulation means if it goes to overtime and they win, you don't win your bet. So they got to win in regulation. All right, let's get to the Q&A. What do we got? Alex Ivanowski, what do you think? Oh, yeah, Pierre and I were talking about this, of Dylan Larkin's comments on Detroit not doing enough at the trade deadline and it causing the team to be flat. I'll just quickly say, I don't think it's a good look when a player is questioning a GM's moves publicly. I'm not saying that Dylan Larkin is incorrect. I'm not saying that there weren't mistakes made by Steve Yzerman. I just think you keep that in-house. That's my take on that, Pierre.
I'm not sure that's going to resonate very well. That's all I have to say about that.
Yep.
Between Jimmy Devellano, Steve Yzerman, and the Ilitch family, I'm not sure that's going to play out really well.
Yeah. And I get it. I get his frustration, but just keep it in-house. All right, next question. Morantz, here's another question. Marc-Andre Fleury is the only goalie that has beaten all 32 NHL teams. Do you know if there's another goalie close to doing that?
I'd like to know what Jonathan Quick has done. I'd like to know what Roberto Luongo has done.
Hold on a to-do list, Pierre. I'll put it on so we'll have it tomorrow.
Yeah, Roberto Luongo, Jonathan Quick. Carey Price.
Yep, I could see all those guys being close. I would say the active ones, I think you nailed it on Quick.
No, obviously now it could be a trick question because there's 30 teams in the league. So you beat your own team. But Luongo moved more than once. So the potential was there for him to do it. And Jonathan Quick has moved as well.
Twice.
So the potential was there for him to do it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Carey never moved, obviously, but could he have beaten the other 31 teams? I'm going to say probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yep. All right. Next question. Renaissance Resistor. Which over 30 player in the KHL could step in and make an impact in the NHL? Renaissance, sorry, I didn't see that while we were on with Roman. I don't know the landscape of that.
Yeah, I'd have to study that. I'd have to study birth dates and stuff on that. But I would, Jimmy, mark that down too. That's a really good question.
Okay. Next question, please. A to Z me. The Quinn Hughes news today was pretty jarring if you're a Canucks fan. How do you guys think it will play out? Is Vancouver headed towards a full rebuild? First of all,
they could be heading to an arbitration in the league office.
That's where I was going to go here. Thank you. Like, that was the first thing that went on, the light bulb that went off in my head. And I said, well, so is this considered soft, medium, or hard tampering? Like, there's no
such thing. You either tamper or you don't.
No, that's the joke.
I told you that last time.
Yep.
And you learn that quick when you get in the league.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about this one. We haven't seen anything out of the league office yet, but I would imagine there was a subtle little phone call.
Yep.
I'm just going to say.
3 hours ago. Yeah, he's probably got the call by now. The other thing, too, obviously the coaching news, too, that they are declining the club option on Tocchet, but have put an offer forward, waiting on him. Pierre, am I reading this wrong, or is that them just in case that, like, they probably are 50-50 feeling whether he's going to stay or not, in case he goes, it's to lower the PR blow that they'll take, that they're saying, well, he wanted out.
What happens if he ends up in Seattle?
Ooh.
You know there's a relationship there, right?
Yes,
Tocchet and Francis won a Stanley Cup in 91 together and a President's Trophy together in 93. And Bottrell, who's going to be the general manager, when they won the Stanley Cups in 16 and 17.
Mm-hmm.
16 and
Not
17.
Too far of a move.
No, they were working there together at the same time. So I'm just saying, like, could that happen?
I think there's the possibilities are endless right now.
Endless. The possibilities are endless.
Yep. I think there's a lot of things that could happen, and I think there'll be a domino effect once he makes his choice. I wonder, we've heard a lot of teams, that fired their coaches being close to. I wonder now, does everyone wait to see what happens with Tocchet, and then it's a domino effect?
There's another one, though, that I know you're thinking about it, but I don't think people are thinking about it. Everybody's going to focus on Bilesma. Ronnie Francis moving from GM to president. No, I don't think too many people had that working when they were thinking about potential management changes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. Next question. Randy Workman, was the grade cross check a major?
I thought it was.
I agree with Pierre. And for those out there that are saying that there was some weak calls by the refs last night and blasting the refs. As Pierre said earlier, every single one of those was a penalty. Sometimes maybe they let it go because it's the playoffs. But like I said to Pierre, if you're doing it right in the ref's face, what the heck do you think he's going to do?
I talked to a young player today. Okay. I'm just telling you, I watched this game. There's a penalty at one end of the ice, and then he took a penalty at the other end of the ice. It's the exact same play. And he says to me, what do I do? And I said, I'll tell you what you do. You learn from what the referee called earlier in the game. And if the referee's going to call that at one end and you do it at the other, he's going to call you too. So you got, people don't know this because most people have never been on a bench. You got to remind your guys too during the game. Like they're calling a lot of cross checks. They're calling a lot of hooks. They're calling a lot of holds. They're calling a lot of interference. Like you got every game's different. I'm going to tell you this one, and I hope he hears about it. When I looked like I was going to go be the GM of a team, I won't tell you which one, I contacted Billy McCreary. I have so much respect for Billy. Billy's a Hall of Fame official, and he always treated me amazing when he was officiating and when I was doing games on TV and he was still working. He really treated me well. And I said, Billy, if I get this job, I have an idea. He said, what is it? And I said, I want to hire you full time, and your only job is to scout the officials in the league, break down their propensity for how they call games. But then I want you to scout the guys in the American League, because I want you to tell me when the guy gets to the NHL, does he call the game the same way or doesn't he? I don't think teams have enough intel about how officials call. Now, in the 6-team league, I know in the 6-team league they did, because it was the same referees every night. You got 32 going to 34 teams. So the more the game grows, the more the officials grow. And it's not just in the NHL, it's below the NHL.
Yeah.
So I told, and Billy was really interested. Unfortunately, I didn't get the job, but I was going to hire him to do that.
Yeah. Somebody told me years, I want to say it was probably maybe 2 years ago, the year they broke the regular season record, or the year before, with the Bruins. They said that David Pastrnak is kind of the designated guy on the team to read the refs' patterns and learn about the refs. And ever since then, I've always kind of kept an eye on him and his relationships with the refs, Pierre. He talks, out of any of the Bruins, he talks to the refs the most. He seems to have this great rapport. And so I thought that was pretty interesting that he's taken that upon himself to help himself and his teammates do that.
That is interesting. I agree with you.
All right, next question. Dave Abbott, J&P, what teams could be looking to retool and be a potential trading partner for the Habs? Thank you.
Seattle.
I was just going to say that. Seattle
might be.
Yep.
I'd like to see what Anaheim's going to do now.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to see what Utah's going to do.
What
about Utah? How come nobody talks about Utah?
I don't know.
When's the last time they made the playoffs? And don't count the COVID stuff.
Yep.
So,
and that's an owner that wants to get really good, really fast, Pierre. Like, I don't see him sitting on his hands at all.
No, and they were proactive last year. They spent a lot of money last year.
Right.
Compared to what they were spending in Arizona, they spent a whack of money last year.
I would think we should keep an eye on that team in the next 2 months.
So those are just for the question. Those are some of the teams I'd be looking at.
Yep. All right. Next question. Fuck's sakes. How about Mario? How about how Mario treated Kevin when he was down and out? Please talk on that, guys.
Well,
yeah.
Mario Lemieux and Kevin Stevens were amazing friends and still are. It's such an honor for me to go to Mario's fantasy camp every year and to see how Kevin interacts with all his old teammates, but also all the people that are there, and the way Mario acts with Kevin. As somebody that worked with them, it makes you really proud to see the relationship that they have. Mario's a special guy. I don't think people really he chooses for it to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
But he's, Phil Bork, Kevin, you can ask a lot of the guys that were there. Mario's got a heart of gold, and he cares about people.
Yeah.
He really does.
I'll just tell you that bond is like brothers between those two for sure. All right, next question.
Except Kevin's not as good a golfer. Sorry, Artie, don't get mad at me.
Good scout though, right, Pierre?
He's not a good scout. He's a great scout.
He's a great scout.
Kevin Stevens is as good a scout as there is in the National Hockey League.
Yep.
I'm telling you right now. And the only way I know that, I'll tell you how I know it. We talk about players. He knows players.
Yep. I love calls from Kevin, and he starts cranking out
He knows players. And he's passionate about. The biggest thing about scouting, people don't talk enough about it. Scouting's a passion business. If you want to be at the rink, you're not like, oh my God, I got to go to the rink again. You got to want to go to the rink.
Yeah.
You're
not complaining about the travel you have to make.
No, he wants to be at the rink. I see him every time I see him. He's like, he's into it. I love him.
Yeah. Glad we brought that up because there's something I spoke to you off here that I wanted to bring up on air too. Can we get rid of the excuse? Because I'm seeing this a lot on social right now, specifically when people are talking about the Bruins and their scouting history, and everyone's saying, oh, well, X amount of teams passed on that guy, so how can you blame this team if they did it too? I mean, that's what are we supposed to fire Don Sweeney because the Bruins passed on a guy that 60 other teams passed on, or got passed up 60 times? No, that's not an excuse. As Pierre always says, don't follow the herd. Don't run with the herd.
Don't run with the herd, man.
I've never been an NHL scout, but I think Pierre will say I'm right when I say this. I think one of the biggest things about scouting is to be able to identify something that another team didn't, right?
That is correct. And I never talked to you about that.
Yeah.
The easiest guys to scout are the guys that got the high skill level.
Right.
Because they stand out in every game. Those guys are easy.
Yeah.
It's the other guys.
Like I bring up Lane Hudson and how many times he got passed on there, and everyone says, well, I mean, everyone else was passing on him, so what's the big deal? What's the big deal? The big deal is you didn't identify it. If you said that to your boss, I would imagine you'd be fired in a heartbeat. So please.
I don't want to get into it, but I told Jimmy a story about a player that we drafted in Pittsburgh and took him in the late rounds. We had a second round pick, and we traded our second round pick that year to get Joey Mullen out of Calgary. And I will never forget how happy Bob Johnson was at the draft table in Vancouver. We're surrounded by 50,000 people, and Bob's there like this and, rubbing his face and rubbing his hands, all excited to get Joey Mullen. And so we didn't have a pick. So Calgary took a player. You can go look it up in the 1990 draft, French kid, and he never didn't play in the league. Okay. In the 7th round, we took a player that I wanted to take in the 3rd round.
And he had dropped.
But he went all the way to the 7th.
Yep.
He played 11 years.
Yep.
He played 11 years. So all those media people saying this stuff, bunch of hogwash.
Yeah. Enough already. Gosh. All right. Next question. Joe Segredo, 3 coaching jobs in New York, Anaheim, and Seattle. Who ends up where? Joe, it's funny. So you put that question up there, and I'm always kind of looking over at the questions. And that was before I saw the news on Seattle. I was like, Seattle? So yeah, 3 jobs there already.
Well, I'll tell you what. Here, I can't tell you who's going where, but I'll tell you, Tockett's name is going to be in play. I'm going to say David Carl's name is going to be in play. By the way, can we get the record straight here? Can you take over on David Carl when I'm done? I got to think Joel Quenneville's name's going to be in play. So I've just given you 4 names for 3 jobs.
What about, do you think Peter Laviolette that just got fired? Do you think he ends up with a step right away?
I don't. No, I don't.
I have a weird feeling he takes a step back for a bit. I do.
I don't. And that's no disrespect meant to Peter.
No.
Peter, no. A lot of respect for Peter.
I know after that, the experience this year, I might want a little breather. That's
so can we just talk about
David Carl? So, for all you regulars here, that about 2 months ago, Pierre was already connecting the dots and connecting David Carl to Chicago, to the Blackhawks. And we have been ever since. And, I wrote about it as well. And there's certain people out there right now that are reporting this as if it's breaking news, and it's not. It's been well talked about here on the eye test for 2 months. So, we had that here. Pierre and I don't like doing that, but it's getting to the point where there's one person that's really trying to seize the moment there, and we don't appreciate it. All right, next question. Ethan Russell, what direction you see the Islanders going in this summer?
Good question.
That's a great question, Ethan.
It's a great question. So, Ethan, just to be totally transparent, I sent a text to a friend of mine that's involved in the organization this morning. I have not heard back yet, but if I do hear back, I'll definitely share the information. And it's not like I'm leaking inside info. I just asked, quite frankly, if they had time to talk, because I want to talk to them about different things that are going on in their group. That's all. And if I find anything out, I'll be sure to share it.
One thing that'll be interesting, Pierre, I think, I don't know, has he declared that he's going back yet, Iserman, or is that still up in the air?
Steve?
No, Cole.
Cole, I think Cole Eisenman's going back
Islanders.
to BU. I think he's going back to BU.
I think he needs one more year. And by the way, quickly, on a BU note, I do see Randy Workman asking, Jimmy, is the BU coach in play? Meaning Jay Pandolfo. From everything I'm told, that's a hard no. I'm told he's very happy where he is right now. That could change. He could get an offer he can't refuse. I don't know. But from everything I've been told, he's very happy at BU.
I do think the Bruins will go to the college route, though, to hire a coach.
I do. But I think if they ask him, I don't think they're going to get the answer they want. But I do think there's somebody else that you and I have been discussing, but we're not at liberty to say it yet.
No.
So, all right. Next question. Juice_031017. How high would Brady Tkachuk have gone if he was available for the 2017 draft? Pretty high.
Well, he went fourth.
I thought he got the draft numbers wrong. I think he's saying if he went for the next.
Oh, the next year?
Yeah. If he had gone back to BU.
Yeah, well, he should.
Tell me. I know. But Pierre, the one thing you always point out that people don't realize when you're trying to show how hard college hockey is.
Brady Tkachuk, his first year in college, had 8 goals. His next year in pro, he had 23.
Yeah. So, for people wondering why college hockey is getting so much leverage, there you go. That's how hard it is. All right, next question. Steve Lash, if the roster stays the same, Pierre and Jimmy, and you're interviewing for the Rangers head coach, what are you asking Drury during the process? Ooh.
I know what I'd ask him. What do you like about your team? What don't you like about your team? And what don't you like about it? How are you going to fix it?
Mm-hmm.
Who do you consider your premier prospects that don't have the privilege of coaching?
Do you ask him anything about the past, or the past is the past?
I don't. You know what? When you coach in the league, there's the one thing you need to know. The best day of your life is the day you get hired, because it's one day closer to the day you're getting fired. So
there you go.
That's any coach that tells you any different, they don't know what they're talking about. They never coach in the league.
Yeah.
So that's just how it works.
All right, next question. WK, is there anything similar between Montreal versus Washington 2025 versus 2010 series? The only one thing is there's number 8 on the Washington Capitals.
Well, so for Montreal, I don't think Montembeau's Halak.
Yeah,
I don't. I don't think Montreal has Josh Georges. I don't think they have Roman Hammerlick. I don't think they have Yaro Spacek. 3 guys that were absolutely fearless shot blockers. I do think they got guys like a lot of their forwards are pretty similar. I do. I did every game in that series. It was really impressive.
Yeah.
But the fearless nature of Hammerlick, Spacek, and Josh Georges, it's forever indebted right in my brain.
Yeah, I did it. You saw the story I did, Pierre. I interviewed Alan Walsh, Halak's agent, just about that experience. And I had forgotten that, Halak Mania had gotten so big in Montreal as a result of that series that they were spray painting stop signs in the city, Halak over stop.
Oh.
And then it became
I was living there.
Oh my God.
People don't realize in Montreal, the province of Quebec, it doesn't say stop, it says arrête.
Exactly.
It says arrête. And so they were taking it and putting it back.
And we also pointed out
funny.
Yeah. And then after Halak got traded, somebody, a charity group or somebody had come to them and said, we think you should do an autograph session because the fans really want to say goodbye. So they went out to Fairview Mall in the West Island, and 25,000 people showed up to say goodbye to Yaro Halak. I mean, he took that city by storm.
Did he ever?
Maybe Demidov does. All right, we'll see. Next question. Morantz. The key to stand a chance to win the series against Washington is goaltending. Do you agree? If Montembeau flops after 2, would you go with Dobis? I mean, yeah, Morantz, it's always going to be goaltending. I think the biggest thing, too, I want to see how much the Montreal defense, maybe like that 2010 team, utilizes block shots, how much they're trying to just clog up that neutral zone, clog up in front of the net. Don't let those shots through. Force them to get to the net. If they do that, they have a really good chance.
That's fair. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. And by the way, yeah, if he flops after 2 games, maybe they make a change. All right. Next question. Paul Cormier, Pierre, do you think that Hughes would contemplate using an offer sheet to RFA centerman? Either lose draft picks that way or via trade, pros and cons of both. I definitely don't think it's free agency, and Pierre agrees with me on that, but I don't know. Pierre, what do you think on the offer sheet?
Tough on an RFA. Tough on an RFA. People saw what happened between Edmonton and St. Louis last summer. Their spider senses are going to be up. People are going to be paying attention now. That was the first one in a while. I think it was the first one since O'Reilly was offered from Colorado to Calgary. I think people are going to be paying attention to that route, Paul. I'm not sure that's going to happen.
I know that too, in terms if it did happen, but I mean, and I'm with Pierre though. I think it's going to be tough because I think people are like, "Whoa, look at what just happened to Edmonton." I don't want that to happen to me. I would say I know everyone keeps talking about Matthew Nyes, but I'd keep an eye on Velarde. If I'm a GM, if I'm the Canadian, that's a guy I'm targeting right there. If he were to go that route, but I don't see Winnipeg not matching. But that's the guy I'd be looking at. All right, next question. Ron LaRoque, what does that say when the GM goes to the president? Good enough to pick a GM, but not good enough to pick a player? Enlighten me.
I'm staying right out of this one, Ron, because
I don't know.
It involves a former player of mine who I have a ton of respect for. I sit on the Hockey Hall of Fame selection committee with Ron, so it's not appropriate for me to talk about that.
Yeah, and I don't really have the answer for that. The one thing I would say, though, Pierre, and I think you'd agree with me, is that it's very situational. Like, it depends on how that team is, right? Because we've seen guys like, I think, at Colorado. Look at how symbiotic McFarland and Sakakar and the relationship they have. It wasn't like too much change there from what I see from afar. So I think it depends on every team.
Well, here's the thing. Unless they thought in Seattle that Jason Botterill was going to be, a candidate for a job and they did not want to lose him, they could have done that and said, okay, Ronnie, here's a deal we have for you. We want you to move up because we think Botterill's going to get poached by somebody. That could have happened too. Right. Now, do I know if that happened or not? I don't. I'm friends with Jason, but I don't know if that's happened or not. I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say, it doesn't necessarily mean like the guy moving up to president is out and he's not influencing decisions. It's, each relationship's different, I would imagine. All right, next question. Mike, I'm sure you've watched a lot of games in college. No, Pierre doesn't watch any college hockey.
Look at Matty Beniers. We'll go down. Matty Beniers. I've been watching Matty Beniers play since 2011. So he was playing for the South Shore Kings, and the two best teams the three best teams in the East were the Syracuse Stars, the South Shore Kings, and the Mid-Fairfield Rangers. So I used to see all the top kids for all those teams. Matty Beniers is a good player. He went to Michigan after being part of the development program. He's recruited by every major Division I school in the country. I always thought he was going to be an elite number 2. I never thought he was going to be a 1. I think he's developing at the right pace. He's 22. Actually, he's still 21. He's not 22. He's a late birth date. So I think Matty Beniers is developing the right way, but he's not. I don't think Matty Beniers was ever going to be a number 1 guy. I thought he was always going to be an elite 2 who you'd have a chance to win with.
All right, next question. AG, what is the one adjustment the Canadiens must make to win game 1?
Spend a lot of time in Washington zone. Do not spend do not spend when you're defending against their cycle. If you're spending more than 15 seconds at a time defending, that's too long. You got to get it closer to 10 seconds when you're defending and spend more time in their zone than they spend in yours.
Okay. Next question. LGRW. Any truth to Eisman taking Jim Delvano role in one of Draper or Horkoff being the GM next year?
I haven't heard that, but anything's possible. Both Draper and Horkoff are outstanding at their jobs, really good at their jobs. Eisman's really good at his job, and Jimmy Delvano's not getting any younger. So, I mean, anything's possible, but I haven't heard that.
All right, and that's it for our questions. Oh, and by the way, congratulations to Pascal Vincent, named the AHL's outstanding coach for this season, Pierre.
What a team.
Yep.
By the way, Florian Jackie's crushing it there.
Yeah.
He's going to play in the NHL next year. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
He really had of all those kids that were down there, he had a big impact.
And he's been doing it as a bottom 6 guy, right, Pierre?
Yeah. Most of the year. Yep. Yeah. He's had a heck of a year there. Really
all good. Right. Listen, we want to thank you, Pierre, for setting that amazing interview up with Roman Rotenberg, and thank you to Roman as well. It was a pleasure. I learned a lot from that interview. Thanks to you, the listeners and viewers, and for all your questions here. And, of course, to Shane working the boards up in Montreal. He is Pierre McGuire. I am Jimmy Murphy. This has been another edition of the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Eye Test with Pierre McGuire and Jimmy Murphy on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.